Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And today I get to bring you a longtime friend of mine, a very successful businessman in the East Mountains and in Albuquerque. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Here we are here to talk about his balloon. And he flies his balloon all over the East Mountains and down in town, and it's just a really fun conversation. So, Steve, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for the invite, Kara.
It's fun. This is going to be one of our funnest subjects and topics so far.
I hope so.
Talk to me. First of all, are you native?
Yes, born and bred out in the East Mountains.
Oh, really? The whole time, the East Mountains?
Yes.
Okay. So you're pretty well known in the East Mountains, and now everybody knows you when they look up in the sky and they see your balloon going by. But how did you end up getting so involved in balloons to where you end up being a pilot?
Well, growing up in Albuquerque or East Mountains back in the 70s, Mom packed us up and we went into town, and we were wondering why we're going into town. But anyways, we went to an open field over near Coronado, and that's where I think the now Balloon Fiesta is or was. And we got out of the car, and they had us chasing and pointing up in the air, looking at things. And Mommy, what are we pointing at? What are we chasing after? Pretend they're balloons. So I said, okay. So we went around pointing up and looking at balloons, all excited. Didn't really think much of that. And then subsequent to that, at the house, we would see balloons, a lot of balloons flying over the Sandias, as that was a big deal. But turns out it's not too safe, but I want to do it. So we would see that. That was always exciting, seeing the balloons fly by the house in the East Mountains. And I always thought, subsequent later in life, it was balloon fiasco, going to the Balloon Fiesta because of the crowds and the mob scene and all that stuff, and I wasn't really into it. It was great to go see for people that came in and out of town that were interested in going and seeing that. I didn't mind doing that, but I just was crowd adverse. So come 3 years ago, met a friend when I was doing a fiber optic install. He drove his Jeep by and says, "You going to hook us up?" And I go, "Yeah, sure, I'll be by your house and we'll talk about how we're going to get it to your house." And he had a Jeep. I'm a big four-wheeler. I like four-wheeling up in Utah and southern Colorado. And he had a Jeep. And so we got to talking, and he goes, "So when are we going?" I had just met this guy. Nice, really great guy. So we went four-wheeling, had a great time, got to know him a little better, and then I got introduced to his wife. Wonderful couple, just great people. They're from Texas, Houston, and they have a house in the East Mountains as well. And come to find out she's a balloon pilot. And I'm all, "Oh, that's cool." Didn't think anything of it. And we became better friends, me and them, and I told her, if you need additional crew, and everyone wants additional crew, if you want some additional crew, I'm willing to, volunteer my time. She goes, "Yeah, absolutely." So it was about a month or so before Balloon Fiesta. And I said, "Well, if you want me to help out at Balloon Fiesta, that's fine and dandy, but can we go out and fly beforehand? I don't want to be a novice third wheel not knowing exactly what I need to do. Of course, I won't know after one flight, but I want to know what you should expect from me." She said, "Sure, I've got to go fly anyways because it's been 3 months since I've flown last and I need to get current. The FAA wants you to fly basically once a month for 3 takeoffs and 3 landings." So she needed to do that before Balloon Fiesta. So the weekend before Balloon Fiesta, me and her longtime crew, Nancy, went into Albuquerque and inflated her balloon. It's a smaller balloon than mine, but we inflated it, just 3 people, and she took off. And me and Nancy chased after her with all the technology. It's pretty cool. The crew can follow you on your cell phone. And we followed her, and she did 1 landing. We didn't see that. And then she landed again, and then she says, hop in, Steve." "Well, are you serious?" She goes, "Yeah, absolutely." So I hopped in, and we flew, probably another quarter mile. Total flight was probably about an hour and a half in Albuquerque. And then she landed, and it was wonderful, and I just thought, this is pretty cool. But I wasn't sold. I'm not going to get involved in this. So we went and did Balloon Fiesta that year, and it was great. It was that year that during the week she said, "Hop in again." So we took off and flew, and we flew, and the winds were such that it took us south and then north towards the Rio Grande, over the Rio Grande. Well, the winds were such that she was able to descend, and we flew right above the Rio Grande and it was beautiful. You could look north and you'd see kayakers coming down and the mist coming off of the Rio Grande, and then the balloons against that, worthy of pictures. So she landed down, did a splash and dash, and then we took off, and then took off from there, and the winds took us north to Rio Rancho, and I believe we landed in Corrales. That was really cool. It was neat seeing all the balloons in the air flying around with you. It's something I suggest everyone does if they can. And then that was cool, but I still wasn't sold.
Wait. You got to do a splash and dash. First, can you tell everybody what a splash and dash is?
Well, the splash and dash is in Albuquerque. If the winds are right, like they were that day, the balloon pilot will fly and come back and go down the Rio Grande River, which is cool because when you're in the channel there's a little breeze that takes you following the river. And a splash and dash is when she touches down on the water and she goes, "Get ready for your feet to get wet." Well, that never happened, but she did splash. Usually the basket gets some water on the bottom, and then she takes off, and then you go on your merry way. That's a splash and dash.
And that didn't do it for you?
No, and the other thing about that flight is the KRQE's helicopter was flying, and they zoomed in on us as we did our touchdown. That was really cool to see, and that was my first bit of fame on national news because the national affiliate CBS picked it up and showed us doing that. So that's my 5 seconds of fame.
There you go.
So it wasn't sold at that, and you'd be surprised, you're amazed, well, why wasn't that awe-inspiring enough for you to do it? Just wasn't. I was happy being crew because Debbie and Robin Rice, my friends who flew, and she's an instructor and happened to be my instructor, just wonderful people to be around. So after Balloon Fiesta, we went up to the Durango Animas Valley Balloon Rally, and that was wonderful. We had a great time, and that is my favorite place to fly because it's after Balloon Fiesta, about 2 weeks, and the trees are changing, and it's not in Durango, it's not up north of Durango in that little valley. And it was cold, but when you got up in the air, it's really, really neat. So we went up there. I crewed with her. I didn't get to fly up there, but it was just really beautiful and good time with friends. So then a year later, we come around Balloon Fiesta again, and it was the middle of COVID, so we didn't really do Balloon Fiesta, but we did Balloon Siesta. I think it was Saturday and Sunday, which would be the mass ascension. A few balloonists got out to Balloon Fiesta Park, and she flew from there, and that was really cool, but it was a really bummer. A week later, she invited me to go up with her to Taos. And what we did up there is the three of us, me, Robin, and Debbie, went up there, and we parked north of the the bridge over the Rio Grande, and inflated her balloon on the mesa there. And then what she did was she took off, and the leader, it was a guided tour, probably 8 or 10 balloons, guided tour. He took them up off the mesa, and they descended down into the gorge. And I like to say she flew underground.
Wow. That had to be incredible. Were you on the bridge seat looking over?
No, she was north of the bridge, so she didn't quite get to the bridge. But we were on the mesa looking down, so we got photos of her and the lead balloon, the tops of them, as they floated down the Rio Grande. And she went so far as to drop down far enough. Actually, it was 4 of us because Nancy, her crew chief, was there, and Nancy flew with her on this epic flight. She went down, and I like to say she went whitewater ballooning because she floated down over the rapids in her balloon on the water.
Wow. Is that what did it?
That was not what sold me.
Oh, come on, Steve.
Very cool. I admit, very, very cool. What got me sold is the next weekend was the Animas Valley rally, and Colorado didn't have as severe restrictions as this state did. So we went up there and went through the whole thing again, and it's, like I said, just beautiful up there, and I can't wait to hopefully fly in that rally. But anyways, we set up the balloon and take off. The first day she takes off with the sponsor, and we go chase her down and got some really great shots of her with the trees changing. And there's the Animas River flows through there, and there's pools where the farmers take the water out of it. Got some great pictures of her coming down to do a splash and dash on the pool, but it looks like her balloon's on top, and then with the reflection, it's an exact mirror. Oh, so that's a cool picture. That was day 1. Day 2, she took off and flew another sponsor, I believe, And then day 3, she said, Steve, hop in. Well, okay. So we take off. The first 2 days, the winds were perfect. She just flew right down the valley and landed in the valley, what you want to do. Up in Durango in the Animas Valley there's 2 mountains that come up. And you want to be in the valley. You don't want to be going to either side of the mountains to land. Well, we're flying along, and I bring bad luck, I guess, because we took off. The winds were so gentle anyways, but they just would not push us to the center of the valley. And I'm kind of freaking out because you want to land where there's no trees. So we kept getting pushed further south and further west, kind of near the mountain. So we're coming along, and I'm looking at her instruments going, this is where we're heading, and she's just as cool and calm as can be. She's been a pilot for 30 plus years. So she's cool and calm. I'm kind of freaking out, and we're inching over, and I see this road that goes south. I go, can we hit that? She goes, we'll give it a try. So she vents her balloon, and we start coming down, but the winds just wouldn't push us towards that road. Well, that road was a switchback to come back, and at the end of that road was a cul-de-sac. And we were kind of approaching where that cul-de-sac was. So I'm all, that's cool. Well, at the end of the cul-de-sac, there's a trail that goes up into the forest there. And we weren't quite hitting the path to the cul-de-sac. We were just about 200 yards north of the cul-de-sac. So she goes, well, we're going to have to come down here. And I'm completely freaked out. And she's as cool and calm and collective as you can be. And I'm just admiring that. We come down, we approach to land, and she lands into a probably 15-foot pinon that stops us. She lowers it enough to where I can hop out, throws me the drop line, which you never want to deploy because it's a 100-foot rope that you have to coil back up, and it's painful to do. But anyway, she deployed that. I was out, and I was holding her down. And then at that time, her husband and the sponsor's husband from the previous 2 days came up to help us out. But anyway, she reinflated, and we hiked the balloon down to the cul-de-sac where a bunch of the neighbors and kids were out, and we deflated there, and my heart was racing. Whole time she's cool, calm, and collective. And I go, I think I can do this. So we pack up the bag. The kids, she just loves kids, and she has the kids jumping on the envelope, having a great time, and running around with their shoes off and just having a great time taking pictures, and they helped us pack up. My heart's still racing. And I'm just thinking, I can do this. So then I get to talking to her. She's an instructor, and she was my chief instructor. Talking about it, and I go, I think I want to do this, and I'm willing to spend X money on getting one. It's a total God thing. He knew it placed that in my heart to do, and I'm looking on Facebook, and lo and behold, there's a balloon in Belen. It's a great big green alien. Now, the balloon I bought had never flown in Balloon Fiesta because the guy I bought it off of, he was a ride operator down there in Belen, and he would offer rides during Balloon Fiesta down there. So he would be making money on those balloons during Fiesta. People come down and fly down near Belen. Well, he had come down with COVID pretty bad, I think long term, and he was just getting rid of what he had. He had a bigger balloon than mine, and he had sold that, and then he had mine he was selling. So I got everything all together, the trailer, the fan, the envelope, the basket, everything you need to go fly. And that was 2 weeks after the Animas Valley crash. Not crash, but incident. Not incident, just hard landing or challenging landing, let me put it that way. Picked it up. My instructor, because she lives between Houston and here, is not out here all the time to train me, and she's excited that I bought a balloon and I've got the bug. So she puts me in front of another friend of hers, and he starts training me. We go down, look at the balloon, I buy it, and then we take it in for its annual inspection because every year or every 100 hours it has to be inspected. So we take it in because it had been at an annual for quite a few years, get it inspected and get it airworthy, ready to go. And then, so that was November when I purchased it. We were training mid-December, in the middle of COVID. So a lot of my training, a majority of my training was in Albuquerque, and that's painful because traveling from the East Mountains to Albuquerque, where we fly in Rio Rancho, is a 50-mile one-way trip. And some days we'd go out there and it'd be a no-go. And that's a huge letdown for your crew and me, learning to fly. So we went through 3 months of doing this pretty religiously, getting enough hours to do it. Previous to this, I was a pilot in an airplane. And once you're a pilot, you're always a pilot. It just depends on what type of aircraft you're flying. So I was a single-engine land pilot, meaning I had a small airplane that I would fly. And in 2003 or 4, I had a gear-up landing, and that ended my flying career in airplanes because it's expensive to fly an airplane. It's very expensive. So that ended that career. And then in my justification in my mind for flying a balloon was, well, hangar space is dirt cheap. It's just in the trailer. Fuel is $3, $3.25 at most. It's propane. So I go next door to my shop and fill it up with propane, $3 a gallon as opposed to $7 now for aviation fuel. Insurance was pretty dirt cheap compared to an airplane. And then the principal and interest on the airplane was, expensive. So in my cost justification, I go, yeah, for the ability not to be able to turn or go where you want to go, getting up in the air in this is pretty cool. And it's a novel thing to fly. So did a lot of training in Albuquerque, and I soloed the first time out in Moriarty at my office on 4/3/21. A day that will be in my mind forever. Soloed, that was very fun, about an hour and a half solo flight. And then in November, we wrapped it up, and I got my pilot's license flying with Beth Wright-Smith as my designated examiner, and I've been flying since. Last year, I did not fly very much because out here in the East Mountains, it was like spring all year, real windy, and you got to have pretty much low to no wind to even get the balloon to stand up. So this year I flew once April 1st for about an hour and a half. That was a great long flight. We flew from in Edgewood, Venus Park, all the way south to Moriarty off of Lexico and Martinez. That was an interesting landing. It landed about 7 feet from a fence, a barbed wire fence, and then skidded towards the fence, and the fence did stop me, but we didn't break the fence or nothing.
Oh, gosh.
But then when we were laying the envelope down, which is the balloon, some of it got caught up in the barbed wire. So my balloon, his name was Cosmos to start with, but he's also known as Patches. But it's common for balloons to have this problem. So last weekend, I flew it again from my office again for about a 45-minute flight with one of my crew members, and had a wonderful flight, about 45 minutes, 4 miles, just took off over the freeway, took off from my office, flew over Interstate 40, got a lot of honks and stuff from the trucks and everyone, and then landed ever so perfectly. That's been the story, if you will, of how I got involved with ballooning.
Wow. And so are you addicted? Are you a balloonatic?
I wouldn't go so far as to say balloonatic. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of pre-planning. When you become a balloon pilot, you become an amateur meteorologist. So around Wednesday, I'm looking for what's Saturday going to look like, because primarily I fly on Saturdays because my crew can be available. So I'm looking, like if I was going to fly this Saturday, I'd be looking on Wednesday, what's the predicted winds at my office or at Venus Park in the East Mountains? And the reason I fly in the East Mountains is because that's where I live, and it's only 12 to 25 miles if I fly from Venus Park in Edgewood, or 25 to Moriarty. It's not a big deal if it's a no-go because my crew lives out here too. So they're not investing an hour and a half of their life for a no-go. So it's been an interesting course. What was the question one more time?
I don't even remember. But I did want to ask you, what is the name of your balloon now?
It's Cosmos.
Oh, is it still? Okay.
Right. No, it'll always be Cosmos. When I bought the balloon, I put on Facebook, hey, everybody, look at what I bought. It needs a name. Here's a contest. Whoever gets the name gets to come fly. So a lot of people put out a lot of great names, but my niece, Natalie, came up with Cosmos, and I go, there you go. And they were thinking Cosmopolitan for the drink, and I'm all, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works.
So he's known as Cosmos, but with the number of patching I've had to do, he's also known as Patches.
Patches. I like that. That's fun.
I was talking to my wife. I go, we should go down to Roswell around the 4th of July and just inflate it and maybe fly and see what they think.
Oh, you totally should. You totally should. That would be so much fun. Yeah. So what is the best part of ballooning for you?
The joy of taking up people that never did it. This past flight I did, I took up a crew member, and I was going to take up him and the husband and wife. I was going to take them both up. I was kind of short of crew, and in this, you learn safety tips and tricks that you want to abide by, and I kind of broke my own rule. My balloon is so big that I tell myself I need 5 people to be crewing, so 5 including myself, to do this successfully without putting a lot of strain on my crew. You got to take into consideration your crew. So I had 7 people lined up to go fly, but 2 of them at the last minute came up with eating ailments that they had the night before, so I ended up with 4 that day. And plus, at the office there, we flew with 2 balloons. I've gotten to know some other pilots out in East Mountains, and one of them, he came out and inflated his balloon. And he was inflated before I was, because I had to go inflate my balloon to go find the holes from laying it down on the barbed wire and patch those up. So he took off way before me. But it was really cool to have 2 balloons leaving my office. So flying, the biggest trick, back to your question. So I took up, he didn't want to go because he was scared. And I said, Lizzie, you got to hop in. So she says, okay. And she just, the bewilderment in their eyes, and, this is so cool. It's so quiet. It's so nice up here. That's what drives me, is seeing them enjoy the trip. And, of course, flying in the East Mountains is wonderful. It's a beautiful place to fly, and not a lot of people do it, but I'm trying to get more people to do it. Case in point, both my instructor, Debbie, her and I, while I was still a student, she had a friend come into town who flies Humpty Dumpty, a guy named Rich Lawhorn. Anyways, he was out there, and he flew with me as an instructor, and then Debbie flew from my office as well. So I got a feel for that, and that was really neat. So during Balloon Fiesta this year, they had that big washout where all the balloons at the Glow got washed out with rain, flood. So Debbie didn't fly that next day because of the weather. It was just a bad day to fly, so a bunch of pilots and other pilots went to help dry out these guys' balloons. Well, Rich's Humpty Dumpty was caught in that downpour, so we went over to the Rio Rancho Event Center and inflated his balloon to dry it out. Then he has another balloon that's even bigger than Humpty called Snowbird, and he couldn't inflate it in that facility because it's so big. He had to go to the rail yards to inflate it. So we inflated that, dried it off. I got to better friends with Richard, and while he was at Balloon Fiesta this year, he hauled out like a 40-foot RV truck and trailer, and he's from Kentucky. And I offered up for him to park his RV and his truck at my office in exchange for, you have got to fly Humpty when I can get Debbie and the 2 other pilots and myself up. So we're hopefully going to get 5 balloons flying out of my office here pretty soon.
Oh, how cool.
With a special shape, no less.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Well, let us know. I'm sure Stan would be happy to crew for you again.
Oh, yeah.
So what I would say that's probably one of the biggest changes by being a pilot is the relationships that you've developed.
Oh, absolutely. And like my wife says, when she's talking to people, the community of people in the ballooning community, they're all extremely helpful. Like I said, when those balloons got slammed with that downpour of water, there was more than their crew there helping out. Other pilots were there because they all know the pain, and they know it'll come around to help them out.
Yeah, it's such a unique thing. So if anybody is listening and they're not from Albuquerque, why should they come for the Balloon Fiesta?
It's a spectacle that everyone should see, I believe. If you ever get the opportunity to fly in it, jump at it. The ride operators, I think they offer a pretty reasonable price to fly in their balloons in Balloon Fiesta, but it's a worthwhile thing. Remember I mentioned that I called it Balloon Fiasco because of the crowds. It's a whole different world when you're crew, because you don't have to wait in the long parking lines, pay the exorbitant amount to park and all that stuff. You ride right in like you're king of the place, and you just sit out there and you just wait to inflate, and then you just chase after them. So for doing crewing and flying myself, it's a much nicer event than having to deal with the parking and everything else that spectators have to do. But for spectators, it's an absolute thing you need to do.
Absolutely. So what if a spectator is hearing this and they're like, well, I'm coming. How do I get on a crew? Would you take someone from Florida to be on your crew?
Absolutely. Like I said, we're always looking for crew, people to help. One of my other instructor, he flies the Flying Pig, and his crew chief, I believe they're from St. Louis. He'll fly it, but it takes a crew of 20 to inflate the Flying Pig. And so, but people will take crew, because people come in from out of town and they can't bring their whole crew because it's expensive. People from out of country come. So yeah, if you can hook up with someone that's flying, I believe on the Balloon Fiesta web or Facebook page or the Albuquerque Quad A, they're always soliciting people to crew. And if you reach out to them, it could probably make space for you.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. Seriously, guys, when I've been here long enough, I've gotten the elite treatment to go, and it is very special. And so if you can get on a crew before you even come, you will have an experience that will be second to none. Anything they should do when they're at the Balloon Fiesta, any of those food booths that they shouldn't miss?
They're all good. I mean, and the crowds are big, so expect a long wait for the food, the breakfast burritos that they all offer. It's just a wonderful event. There's the chainsaw carving competitions that they do that are wonderful as well. But it's just something worthy of going and seeing. And get your tickets if you're just going to be a spectator early. They don't necessarily sell out, but it's worth to do. And if you are interested in crewing, look at those places on the web that you will solicit, because these people are planning now to come in, and we're talking people from all over the country. This is the Super Bowl of ballooning.
It's a Super Bowl in a lot of ways. It's the most photographed event in the world, and if you are planning to come seriously, you should get your hotel, your car reservation, everything now, because it is. And it's crazy. You're driving down the road and there's all kinds of little wrecks. Nothing scary, but little wrecks because people are looking up. They're not looking at the car in front of them. In a chase crew, it happens a lot.
What's interesting is the signs that the police put out. No stopping here and looking. On the freeway of all things. You would think common sense would tell you don't do it, but it's in that human nature.
You can't help it. The skies are just loaded with color. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. Is there anything that you would want from the public as far as like, do you want crew members? Do you want us to put your contact info for them, or just?
I've got a pretty well-trained crew.
Okay.
And any more that I get, it's wonderful. But by and large, I've got enough crew. But there's always room for crew in the East Mountains. If you're in the East Mountains and you're interested, you can reach out to me, because the other guys that I fly with, they're sometimes short of crew as well.
We will give you a way to get in touch with Steve directly via email below. And please don't hesitate to reach out. It's a wonderful thing to do, to go on a crew. And it's also a really cool way to earn your way to a flight. Thank you.